I am Alan Drew, Professor Alan Drew. I'm the director of the Literary Festival and the director of the minor in creative writing. I had not planned to be the MC today. If I had, I probably would have worn a suit or something. Might even have gotten a haircut. Instead, I look like I'm about to get on a ship. So we're stuck with that. Again, thanks for coming out, and glad we've got 5 or 6 people set up to read. And it's, obviously it's poetry, National Poetry Month. It's great to have you all here to celebrate that. So let's get to reading, huh? So I'm going to start us off with Kevin Madden, please.
All right, so hi, like Alan said, I'm Kevin Madden. I'm a senior English major, and this is from the short story that I wrote for the Literary Festival taught by Alan and Lisa Sewell. The name of the story is Suburban Boudoir, the epigraph for which I pulled from Don DeLillo's novel White Noise. The end of my favorite chapter in that book, chapter 13, it says, "The American mystery deepens." Aside from 2 incidents that warranted the attention of the 11 o'clock news, the tranquil suburban enclave of Shadling Hill was largely unremarkable. Secluded amidst the undulating valleys and rolling foothills of rural Pennsylvania, Shadling Hill sat undisturbed on the outskirts of the Pittsburgh metropolitan area, poised on the geographically disorienting convergence of Appalachia, Dixie, and the Great Lakes region. This triple fault line gave the demographic there a unique flavor that was wholly its own, yet simultaneously unoriginal. Several years ago, the town enjoyed a brief moment of notoriety after one of its best-loved citizens, an instructor at the local community college, lost his left eye in a freak teaching accident. At a time when he still employed full use of his visual faculties, Professor Clifford Wilson had been pioneering a new approach to teaching his students stress management through the art of knitting. It began accidentally one afternoon when one of Cliff's advisees arrived at his office door, unannounced and blissfully unaware of any significance behind the phrase, "office hours." Cliff had been in the middle of knitting a scarf for his gout-ridden mother-in-law when the student walked in, and after Cliff adequately addressed whatever concerns this obtuse young man had brought to him, the student wondered openly if he might come back sometime and learn to knit. A curious request, no doubt, but Cliff's mind had begun gnawing on the kernel of an idea taking shape. This particular student had a reputation among the faculty at the small college for being an outstandingly high-stress individual, and certainly there had to be others who could benefit from a once-a-week workshop that capitalized on the mental and emotional benefits of knitting. Why shouldn't Cliff be the one to propose and subsequently teach such a class? And so it went that Dr. Clifford Wilson, Associate Professor of American Studies at Shadling Hill Community College, formulated an extracurricular knitting circle grounded in mindfulness meditation practices for students suffering from crippling bouts of stress. The results were prodigious. Students in Cliff's workshop were missing fewer classes, turning in their assignments with increasing regularity, and earning higher grades. Cliff was well loved by all who knew him. Things were going smoothly until one April afternoon when one of Cliff's students from his course on violence in American media coolly strode into the seminar room, seized a knitting needle, and gored Cliff in the eye with a startling detachment reminiscent of Norman Bates, an assignment on whom the student had flunked a week earlier. Amid the guttural shrieks spilling out of Cliff's spasming lips, the other students in the room, protectors of their beloved professor, detained the assailant until police arrived on the scene. The irony was lost on absolutely no one that an act of such grotesque ferocity took place in a workshop specifically designed to de-stress students, the prevailing moral being not to give high-stress young people bad grades and sharp objects. Following the removal of his impaled, impotent eyeball, Cliff announced his full recovery by adopting a fashionable eye patch which his less violently inclined students had fundraised for him, bedazzled with a glinting blue Swarovski crystal eye. Needless to say, Professor Clifford Wilson since cultivated a decisive preference for crocheting in the years that followed. The second incident was of the more bizarre variety. Not a single eyewitness report agrees with another, but based on the compiled narrative, what seems to have happened is this. Around the 1 o'clock hour on the afternoon of Saturday, December 26, 2015, a white Subaru Forester went careening off an exit ramp, rolled several times, and eventually caught fire after having wrapped itself around the base of a pine tree at the bottom of the hill. One rumor involved a hornet nest clinging precariously to a power line, which allegedly descended with the unerring grace of an Olympic diver and shattered the Subaru's windshield, unleashing a swarm of disgruntled, stinging insects within the vehicle. Another source claimed that he witnessed the flash of a gun being discharged inside the cabin, which led the driver to go tumbling down the side of the hill. Still another insisted that a large, hair-covered hominoid figure had bolted out in front of the car. Whatever led to the crash was never determined, since the cause was overshadowed by the effect. Sifting through the wreckage, the authorities managed to extricate the mangled, unrecognizable pulp that had been the driver merely an hour ago. Additionally, they came across a loaded pistol and a switchblade in the center console, a dirty shovel in the trunk, several empty prescription bottles of controlled narcotics, and, in a curiously anachronistic turn of events, leather driving gloves in the glove compartment. The driver's license in the wallet was a fake, the credit cards were stolen, and the vehicle registration belonged to Doreen Kelly of St. Ignatius, Montana. According to the news correspondent, Mrs. Kelly could not be reached for comment, which led to speculation that her unknown whereabouts might account for the dirt on the shovel. It was this latter incident that Kurt O'Connor thought of as his car barreled out of the tunnel carved under the belly of the mountain. He squinted against the late afternoon sunlight that had cleaved the dim glow of the mildewed cavernous walls that only moments before had been hugging the same highway on which the infamous car crash had occurred weeks prior. Kurt was taking an extended road trip to visit a dear childhood friend who was living in Ohio, and figured it was well worth a stop in Shadling Hill to visit one of his former college classmates. The subject of Kurt's immediate visit, Charisse Evanston, had been living in Shadling Hill for almost 2 years at that point, working toward her graduate degree at one of the more prestigious universities in the area, though it admittedly lacked the distinction imbued by having an eyeless stabbing survivor on its faculty. The self-sufficient only child of neurotic and recently divorced parents, Cher had flourished in her time away from the East Coast, picking up work where she could and cultivating a host of companions who shared her interests, which included classic literature, films with cult followings, and getting very, very stoned. As Kurt pulled into the parking lot of Cher's apartment complex, he saw her pale, delicate figure bouncing whimsically toward him. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. See you later. I should mention, thank Falvey Library for putting this together. It's great to be able to have the space to do these readings. And something else I was going to mention. Oh, if you are just showing up and you plan to read, you can sign up here and get your name down here, and I can get you up here. Or you can just, if you get inspired and you just feel like jumping and reading, just jump up here and read towards the end. So for now, I'm going to call up Sarah Marcinek.
Hello. I have a sonnet to read that I wrote for Dr. Staples' creative writing class. It's kind of historical fiction, and it's called You Didn't Come Back. That last day you told me you would come back as you stood by the half-open door. The icy wind reached for you, summoned you to far away. You followed, took the 100-mile train to war. The first battle was thick smoke veiling the foe, and bullets reel as summer's torrent aflame. Several close calls, shaken, now breathe free again. Your promise lived, and you told me you'd come back. But the next battle, that field was death. Your feet knew when they touched it. You felt it more like ice, less like fire. The world darkened like a sunless dream. The door was open, the wind reaching. Tell me, I know, you didn't come back.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. And next up is Colin Lubner.
Sorry about the laptop. I was drafted into So this is an excerpt from a novella. His first draft I completed in November and have been kind of editing since then. This takes place about halfway through. It follows an elderly author who's kind of washed up. He wrote this series when he was younger, and he kind of, in this excess of time, he kind of delves into this dark stuff. He starts watching child pornography, starts watching this dark stuff, and this young girl comes into his life and blackmails him into writing another series, and this is their first meeting. This is not the first meeting. This takes place about a year after their first meeting. That first year was the hardest. His atrophied writing muscles were slow in their recovery, and Brianna was impatient. Her threats were frequent, especially the first few months. Same stuff that she threatened him with in the email. She'd tell. Didn't you know? If Lou didn't get going, she'd tell. She had the proof, so much proof, and the authorities would love that. The public would love that. Louis Devant and the great Jack Mueller sinking in ignominious flames, etc., etc. She threatened him, but he didn't believe her. She'd put too much into those notebooks to give it all away. At the time, the Black Isle pentology consisted of 3 notebooks. The largest of these contained the main plot points, the rough 5-book arc that Brianna somehow thought he could complete. One of the smaller ones, the yellow one, had some character sketches, some literal sketches, then clean lines and comic book cross-hatching. She showed these to Lou maybe 3 months in. One of them showed a young Rahab and his mother. on the edge of an island cliff watching the sun rise diffuse membranous over the ocean. He told her that they were good, which they were, and she told him to get back to work, but he thought he saw her smile. The last notebook was the smallest, nicer than the other two, faux leather binding and factory yellowed pages. She brought it out once on that windy day in which he first rung the doorbell and entered into his life, but hadn't opened it. After that, it had stayed in her backpack. Lou worked slowly, but he worked well. He warmed to it. It was too easy to stop himself when there was no reason not to, but she had a gun to his head, so he worked. He told himself that he didn't want to write, and at first he didn't. Eventually, though, he did, and this change arrived with a rapidity that frightened him. The plot was good as anything in the first 4 books, maybe better. It was a prequel. Rahab's mother, Abigail, was the protagonist. It made her a hero, and Rahab, well, it didn't make him a villain, not exactly, but it lowered him from a martyr to a man, and all in a mere 5 books. Brianna watched over him, and she guided him, and she threatened him, and she scared him. Her intelligence scared him. She came over once a week that first year. She lived about 10 miles away, she said. Her dad worked for some bank in New York. Lou forgets what the girl's mom did. Brianna mentioned her once in a throwaway, cheery voice on a day when the only sounds in the study had been their breathing and the clacking of his keyboard. Something about moving down south, something about a man named Jeremy. Lou hadn't asked again. She didn't wear makeup, not then, and her wardrobe seemed to consist of only overlarge hoodies. The blue one was a regular, the one with the white knight. He found out that she was a freshman at a high school further up the turnpike. About 6 months in, Lou finally asked her what her father thought she was doing there. It had been nagging at him for a while. Lou would never do anything. God, he wasn't depraved. But he recognized how it must look from the outside, a 14-year-old girl making weekly visits to a single, quite divorced 54-year-old male. She was raising a cookie to her mouth when she asked. The cookies were a tradition by that point when he realized with something like dismay that he'd begun to look forward to their weekly meetings. Her hand slowly lowered. She dropped the cookie onto the plate Lou had set on Maeve's desk. I told you about my dad, right? Lou nodded. Her eyes winked orange, reflected light from a sun that hung low in the sky and filled the study with golden autumn squares. Yeah, I showed it to him once. She swallowed. She could be pretty, Lou realized. This thought came with guilt, but not as much as he thought. In the afternoon light, he found that she could be beautiful. He wondered if others would think so, invisible suitors parading through her future days. He hoped they would. What did you show him? He asked. She gestured at the notebooks lying on Lou's expansive desk. Those. My story, back when that was all it was. What did he say? That it was cool. Her voice was quiet. That's good, Lou said, right? He forced himself to be cheery. He found that her being upset him a great deal. A problem, he noted, for what wasn't the first time. A problem that would have to be addressed. It was business, that was all it was. It was books. I guess. Then he went to work. He drives you here, right? That's her nanny. Brianna swiveled back to Maeve's desk, opened her laptop. She had an essay due in English, she'd said. She'd also finished said essay. What did you tell him, though? Are you interviewing me? He laughed. Or am I senile? I know colleges are all about that volunteering now. Rosa thinks you're my uncle, if that's what you mean. She's new. She closed her laptop and pulled a sheet of completed math problems out of her bag. My dad doesn't even know I'm here. Lou could barely hear the end of this. Her voice is so quiet. He wanted to hug her, but he knew how that would go over, so he didn't. He wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say, so he didn't. He knew what to write, though, so he wrote. That's it.
Thanks, Colin, for jumping in there, and that was great. Thank you. Well, I'm next, unless somebody else out there wants to jump in. Anybody dying to get up here? All right. You can go here. You want to go after me? Yeah. All right. It's good. We don't want to end me. Well, hi again. All right, I'm going to read from the opening section of my new novel that I'm told is going to be out next year, hopefully. Just set this for you. I was going to read the first section, but in the interest of time, I was cutting it down a little bit. I guess we have time. I can keep following it. All right, just a little It's called Hands of the Hunter, and the novel's set in the summer of 1986 in Southern California, the summer that the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, was basically just running around Southern California and using the freeways, driving his car around. He would drive his car around, pull off the freeway, and go into like a community, into a housing tract, and just find an open door and walk in and kill somebody and get back on the road and drive around. This is really happy stuff I'm gonna read. This beginning of this book, I never thought I'd say this, but there's a serial killer in my book. I'm just gonna own it now. Yes, I've written a book with a serial killer in it. And so I'm gonna be the serial killer right now for a couple minutes, just for your pleasure. I'm gonna break in about halfway through this scene. The book opens up with the serial killer, as yet unnamed, and it's evening, Santa Ana winds, and he is wandering through a green belt in a master plan community sort of that runs between houses. He's just been sort of hiding behind a tree watching a teenage couple make out in a park. They sort of hear him, and they frighten him off. He walks on, and he's walking down this green belt, and the lights are coming on, so that's sort of where I'm going to begin this thing. The lights illuminating the path were like bright white moons stabbed into the ground. He was drawn into the warm pools of light and then into the cool darkness and back into light until he found himself in the half-darkness of a flickering bulb. He stood for a moment beneath the staccato filament until finally it sparked and popped. Another light caught his attention then. Beyond the pathway was a window. It glowed orange in the night and cast its mirror image on the mowed lawn beneath it. In that window stood a woman, her head enveloped in steam, her features smudged as though an eraser had been rubbed across her face. He watched the woman now, from the green belt, music from her stereo floating into the hot night. Some sort of jazz, his fingers tingling with the beat, a cigarette-singed singing voice turned loud to keep her company. She was alone. He could feel it. There was an opening in her fence, no locked gate, just a garden of stunted cactus twisting out of white rock. He didn't always know what he was looking for. Sometimes he just went for walks in the neighborhoods, watching the boys in the street, flipping ollies on their skateboards, sniffing the dampness of pesticides sprayed on the grass, peering into windows where women slipped blouses over their heads. These neighborhoods, with their privacy fences and dwarf palms, their green belt walks and rows of eucalyptus, their leaves spicing the air with oily mint. Here, in these neighborhoods, people left garage doors open, left backyard sliding glass doors unhinged. They slept with their windows cracked, the ocean breeze on their necks in the early morning. He might go 3 or 4 nights without the feeling, a week maybe. Sometimes he got lucky and felt what he was looking for 2 nights in a row. Tonight, here in this neighborhood, standing in the pool of darkness beneath a shorted-out bulb, he felt it, and he stepped over the cactus spines into her backyard. He came up along the side of the house. There she was, bent over a cutting board, slicing tomatoes. She was cooking pasta with the starchy thickness of the noodles steaming out the screened side windows, nodding his stomach. It had been a while since he'd eaten. The window beaded with steam, turning the glass into a mirror, and for a moment he could see half of his face. He'd only caught glimpses of it in the last few months, a shard in the rearview mirror, a cheek and an eye in the side view, a nose and a forehead while bent over a sink scouring his hands. His face was soft and boyish, and he was forced to look at it now, that baby face, for a moment before the woman slipped her hand across the pane and glanced at the window. He froze and stared back at her, feeling the charged current pass between them. If she saw him, he would run, but if she didn't? It was dark outside her window, and he knew it was a mirror for her, too. When she tried to look through the glass, all she saw were her own eyes staring back, as though what had frightened her was imagined. No, he said to himself, what you're afraid of is real. Then she turned to the sink and washed the bowl, her head back to him, her shoulders sloped, her flowery house dress tangled around her waist. The music blared into the kitchen, trumpets, bass, drums rat-a-tat-tatting a beat, notes plinking through the screened window like pieces of candied metal. When she was finished, she sat on a stool, facing the boiling pasta, and sipped a glass of wine. There was no ring on her finger, no one coming home to her tonight. He liked her loneliness. Her aloneness would make things easier. People who had someone else, he had discovered, fought harder. He found the glass sliding door. The glass was pulled back. The house opened to the hot wind. Just a screen separated him from the carpeted living room. He tugged on the handle. Locked. He felt his blood rush then, a brief fluttering of his left eye. The door to the basement had a deadbolt on it, an iron hinge clamped shut from the outside. When the door closed, when he was his childhood self, he had been like a bird with a hood pulled over his eyes, blinking in the darkness of his own brain, to the voice in his head strung made-up syllables together, and a space opened up in his mind where the voice lived, and the voice kept him from being afraid. Locked. The screen was locked. He watched the woman in the kitchen, her back bowed with heavy shoulders, the steam tumbling above her head, the music a chaos of metal clinks. It's just aluminum and mesh, he wanted to say to her. Mesh and aluminum, the stupid things that make you feel safe. Doors and walls, screens and lights. He put on the gloves first, like slipping into new skin, and slit a line along the aluminum frame with the X-Acto knife, the plinking of each thread drowned by the squeal of trumpets. When it was cut, he peeled back the screen, and the mesh yawned, open to let him inside. Don't think bad of me. So who's next? Amanda? Luke, you're gonna do it too? All right. So next up is Amanda. Am I gonna say it right? Eliadis? All right. Oh yeah?
Tough act to follow. Okay, so I wrote a piece modeled around Jamaica Kincaid's Girl. Mine's called Educated Mother. This is how you twirl your finger around a pen, not your hair. This is how to open your eyes, slowly, and dare to stare down your future, not a man. This is how to whisper softly so you don't forget to whisper. Don't forget to spell independent. This is how you wear high heels. This is how you strain on tippy toes, evade tendon aching, strut. This is how to dress for an interview with a successful man so he sees you as a whisper, whoa, man, not a meal. This is how to dress for an interview with a woman so she doesn't see you as a threat. This is how to wear heels all day and massage your man's aching after work. This is how to forget your pain through the lens of a tall glass. This is how you use your education for educated dreaming, not a career. For he is not a vessel for your what-ifs and wannabes. You cannot float on dreams alone. This is how to bite your lip and eat your words. This is how to separate yourself from a state of being educated. This is mothering. This is how to bake bread without waiting for it to rise. This is how to buy a cantaloupe note, heavy for its size, tender at the vine. This is how to own him without his knowing. This is how he thinks he owns you. This is how to make life grow inside of you. This is how to live in 5 rooms. This is how to stop it from sucking away who you are. This is how to pronounce your new occupation, mother. This is how to sneak thoughts in between naps. This is who you will become. This is how you quit the job that didn't want you, that quietly resents you for making, distilling, sustaining life. This is how to care all day for one life and massage your man's aching. This is liquid courage shot for the loneliness. This is how to massage your man's aching. This is how to be a shelter. This is how to be a mountain. And this is how you crumble. Did you think it would be easy, this life, as an educated mother?
All right, thank you, Amanda. That was great. Next up is Kathy Staples.
Well, as my students know, I love writing poems about the OED. And so when I was writing this thoroughbred in of the Claters Meadow, and I suddenly felt vertigo hit me. One of the first things I wanted to do when I got home was to look up vertigo, and I was just so interested in the roots and with the notion of vert and green, and this poem came from that. Vert, as in green, vert, a royal domain stocked with deer. Invert, as in tipped as a snow globe, going nowhere in circles, but not lost, not bereft as the wood without deer, waiting for the white-antlered buck or his does, or any slim yearling to step along the berm, return. Vertigo, as in whirling round, swimming in the head, unanchored by the long spring, the horse cantering, the meadow dropping like an elevator into the earth, falling like Persephone through a crevice, a swiveling crack, a lost screw, a lost way, disordered as in death lass, my brother's not coming back. The spin of it continuous, as in looking down from height, and then it stops, the spinning just slows, a chariot wheel stilled in grass. The world is the same, but it isn't. The tip views of trees when hanging from your knees. The deer in 2s and 3s watching. A different green belt. This next one is called Field Note Starlings. I don't know whether you would have seen a murmuration of starlings. It's like a big twisting cloud. And if you've seen it here, what you're probably seeing is a combined migrating band of starlings, grackles, and maybe red-winged blackbirds. But if you haven't, I hope you'll go online and look up a murmuration, and that this will pique your interest. We should also say that this comes out of partly my teaching Virgil and the Georgics to my pastoral core seminar class. Field Note, Starlings. Like a promise made, forgotten, remembered, or a portent out of season, these starlings rise like a single thought, 100 or more lift from shorn corn, settle like a siege in the lone beach. The sun gives signs, and so too the birds. Is Earth now answering questions we haven't yet asked? Why is the wood thrush diminished? The bell of her flute thinning each returning spring. Honeybees are disappearing, leaving their queen. Will statues weep? Is it Virgil's script or Yeats, as the dispossessed stream from the cities, with children on their hips, and the starlings tip, jar, and volute away, each striking their own sharp glint, like winter sun catching on the blade of a ceremonial axe. A bright, wide flickering, with a sound as slow as bees fanning the comb. Groundswell of thunder before it begins. Murmuration, they call it, the sweep of many moving as one. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathy. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Let's see, next up, Opie Famakinwa. Come on up.
Sure. Okay. So this is titled Nigerian Girl, modeled after Jamaican Kincaid's Girl. Nigerian Girl. In this world, this is how you must uphold yourself as a young woman who will soon have a household of your own. When speaking to an adult, always make eye contact with them. Whenever asked a question, you must respond with the ma or sir at the end of your sentence. Never talk back to anyone older than you or question what they say. You need to remember that elders are respected at all times and no matter what. When an adult enters into a room, they must always be greeted with the bow and verbal greeting. Whenever guests visit the house, start by formally greeting them and then offering them some type of refreshment. Usually I will be asking them what they would like to eat, but you should be prepared to go to the kitchen and start cooking and preparing the dishes alongside me. Once the food is completed, arrange a nice presentation of the food and then escort it out to the guests. Make sure to walk slowly and carefully so that there are no spills or accidents whatsoever. You need to stay nearby while the guests are eating so that when they are finished, you can return the dishes to the kitchen and then start cleaning up. Remember, it is rude to have a guest do any work while they are in your home. They are the ones visiting you and must be treated with the utmost respect and hospitality. As the eldest daughter, you must ensure the household is at its best at all times, whether I am here or not. Cleaning must be done regularly. The rug must be swept and dusted every night, and dishes washed after every meal. Your younger siblings must be taken care of. Braid your sister's hair every morning and wake your brothers up to get ready for school. Food must be consistently cooked and present in the fridge, and your father must have his food prepared and clothes ironed out for work. Laundry must be washed, dried, and folded during the week. Never get distracted from what your friends are doing. They may be partying, going to the movies, or whatever you young ones do nowadays. But you have responsibilities to fulfill. There's a lot of pressure on you as a young girl in our culture. So much you need to learn and prepare to do before you leave our house to start your own family. This is not punishment, but training for your future years as a wife and mother. You'll be a strong, independent, hardworking woman who will have a daughter of your own, and she too will join the cycle of womanhood.
That was great, thank you. Kathy, I need to get that assignment, okay? It's for your class, right? Yeah. Good assignment. All right, that brings us to Luke Bosich.
Okay, let's go for it. I'm Luke. I'm a junior, and this was for one of my creative writing classes with Kathy Staples. It's called Seasons of the Atom, Atomic Fall. The sirens roar, calling, ensnaring souls, lost in the streets of chaos, pushing, screaming, voices of emptiness and those beyond, yelling, what will be left behind? Time, seconds are as valuable as hours, and days are no longer. The city's prayers fade, muffled in the horns of man and machine, the devils that we made. Progress brings forth only as it takes, the push and pull we claim, trample on the future, climbing the stairs that time takes from the stream of reality. These cities, angry, lost, hopeful, despairingly naive. Looking towards the sky, the clock sharply ticks, whistling, singing songs shrill to the ears as the crescendo arrives. Silence fills the void. A consuming flash, the clearing fade, reveals stills, forces a deafening shock, wave of tempest winds stampeding, destruction radiating the solitary cloud. Rising as if constructed, dwarfing imaginary infernos, mortaring smoke plumes, devour all else before it. Scorched earth, wastelands, a hell roars, pressing the liminal life beyond its reach, washing over both steel and stone, man and root. Seeds of hope shrivel, burning deep beneath the indomitable winds. Streets are silent, full of skeletons hollowed by man, towers only frames, and the breath of hope snatched, burning voices. Dancing flames whisper to the ash that was us, the ash that is us.
All right, so Luke wasn't planning to read, but he was so inspired by what came before that he decided to get up and do it. Anybody else feeling inspired right now? Feel like they want to come on up? All right, come on up, Charlie.
I just wanted to share a piece of creative writing I wrote. I wrote a speech about nothing. If you were thinking, that's impossible, I say nothing is impossible, or rather, nothing is possible. If you were thinking, nothing good can come of this, I say, think nothing of the kind. My speech has an introduction, a body, a conclusion. They are about nothing. Now, if you are expecting exploits of expansive experiences, riveting revolutionary revelations, or far-fetched farcical fables, you are instead going to get wanton wads of words. This speech does not provide insights from humorists, cleverness from philosophers, or foresights from founding fathers. Here goes nothing. What is nothing? Is nothing the same as zero? Nothing could be further from the truth. Zero, or a cipher, a goose egg, naught, nil, zilch, zip, is a numeral. So that's something. Nothing is the empty set, also known as the null set. Nothing and zero are related in that the empty set has 0 elements in it. Is something always better than nothing? Sometimes nothing really is better than something. There is nothing new under the sun. One of Shakespeare's plays, Much Ado About Nothing, is about nothing. In another of Shakespeare's plays, King Lear asks his 3 daughters, which of you, shall we say, doth love us most? The older daughters profess profusions of passion. Then, to Cordelia, the one who truly does love him most, Lear says, speak. Nothing, my lord. Nothing. Nothing. Nothing will come of nothing. Speak again. Lear ends up giving Cordelia nothing. Oscar Wilde said, I love to talk about nothing. It's the only thing I know anything about. A well-known poem by Robert Frost is called Nothing Gold Can Stay. What's on television? There's nothing on. The Outer Limits told us, there is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission. We repeat, there is nothing wrong with your television set. Sergeant Schultz told Colonel Hogan, I see nothing. I know nothing. One of the most popular television shows of all time was about nothing. Seinfeld. Want to catch a movie? Nothing doing. Nothing's playing. There's nothing to see. Nothing to see here. Move along. Nothing to see here. Nothing could be finer than to be in Carolina in the morning. Nothing from nothing leaves nothing. You gotta have something if you want to be with me. That ain't working. That's the way you do it. Money for nothing and your chicks for free. 'Cause nothing compares to you. You can stop listening now because the rest is about nothing. My good-for-nothing boss, who will stop at nothing to discourage me, said that my speech is nothing to speak of. Okay, it is nothing much to write home about, but it's better than nothing. I'm not saying he has nothing upstairs. You know what I mean, nothing between the ears. Well, next to nothing. Anyway, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Why should he care if I give a speech about nothing? Has he ever had nothing to say? To say nothing of whispering sweet nothings into his girlfriend's ear? Will I ask? Nothing of the kind. We are very different. He is wealthy. He wants for nothing. Anyway, nothing is certain but death and taxes, and nothing succeeds like success. The Beatles sang, nothing's gonna change my world. I've got nothing to lose. You ain't seen nothing yet. Still think nothing is nothing to speak of? Think nothing of it. There's nothing to it. That's it. There's nothing left. I have nothing more to say. Nothing. Thank you.
I like it. That was great. Great performance, too. Thanks, Gerald. So we're down to our last reader, unless somebody else feels they want to step up. All right, well, that brings us to Lisa Sewell.
Our second to last reader. Or did you already read? Oh, you did. Okay. Last reader then. Sorry. Sorry I was late. And I just feel like that's a hard act to follow, Gerald. You should have come to our poetry slam. Okay, so I'm writing these poems about endangered species. And I'm from California, and the state animal on the flag is the grizzly bear, which is extinct in California. And I just think the irony is unbelievable. So I'm going to just read this poem about the grizzly bear, whose scientific name is Ursus arctos horribilis. And I guess I should just say these poems about endangered species were inspired by the work of a Philadelphia sculptor named Susan Hagen. So I sort of start off referring to the sculpture of a grizzly bear. Whether standing like this, surveying the distance, or foraging, fishing, digesting, or denned, how the skinned body resembles yours, the paunch, stuffed like yours, with roots and grasses, ground-dwelling rodents, white bark pine nuts. In the berry bushes where appetite thrives, I reach toward thorny branches and think the sweetness before it satisfies, like Western adventure, a hunting spree, and carcasses left to rot along the highways of California, where the state flag still bears witness. In quest of him, the Cheyenne painted their elaborate skins, performing all the rites for making war on a neighboring nation. Despite the uncountable near-death encounters with these gentlemen in open country, recorded by Lewis and Clark in their journals, though she is man's food that makes food of man, the 1,000 that remain in the lower 48 are almost always at least a little hungry. You have kept the mashed watch and busted compass, bit of your own scalp pickled in a jar, a torn and blood-stained handkerchief for your hope chest and memory box, though nothing can staunch the foul combination, wet dog and rotten meat, stench of hamster cage and musky decay. She has a sense of justice and humor, of winter coming in her muscles, a den facing south, and claws that can grasp and reach, articulate as fingers. Here is a holy necklace made long before that last Californian was shot in 1924. Don't get me wrong, don't wander in a haze or sing a song without purpose, for she can teach you a lesson, twist my arm, break your heart, my whole head between her jaws and the sudden sound of all the many bones that make a skull unmaking as she clamps down and shakes. O grizzly, most pugnacious and ancient survivor, on the trail, in the brush, sing loudly, ring bells, if charged, sound your ground, if attacked, make a cannonball shape, cover the back of your neck with your forepaws. And if I am suddenly there, uncertain what I am or my intentions, do not look me in the eye. What looks playful could be desperation, and in all the faces ever filmed, you will discover no kinship, no understanding, no mercy. So that's it.